Hello, and welcome to My Favorite Games, a podcast for game designers to geek out about games they like to play. Today, I'm super excited to host Dusty and Amy Droz from Dux Somnium Games. Dusty and Amy are the creators of the Victorian flower hunting game Botany and the Rococo gardening game Le Fleur. Do you sense like a theme here? I don't know. But Dusty really loves Star Wars and Warhammer. Amy likes antiques and traveling. They both like ice cream and short introductions. So with that, Dusty and Amy, thanks so much for joining me today.
Absolutely.
Hi, thanks.
So before we get into the games that you've brought to the proverbial desert island today, you've been, it's fair to say, collaborating maybe for a while in multiple ways in your life. When did it become clear that game design was going to become a part of that life as well?
Oh, that's interesting. So we've been together since we were 14, and we are now 40. And so it's a long time. And we've been running our own businesses since just about after we graduated from college. And so we've just sort of been, collaborating on stuff and like working, we work really well together and everything. And a couple years ago, we, as the pandemic did for so many people, it threw, we have a photography business. We have a business that does websites for travel marketing organizations. And for years we were like, we're so diversified. Nothing could ever come along that would damage both events and travel. Yeah. And so we started our flower farm during all that. And then totally unrelated to any of this, for years I have wanted to paint miniatures. And my parents would never let me, but I've been playing other miniature games that were painted since I was a kid. And I said to Amy, this is it. I'm going to do it. We got all this free time. I'm going to paint miniatures. Here we go. And then I was like, then I want a 3D printer. I want to print my own miniatures. Well, we already have an Etsy business. Maybe we could sell miniatures on Etsy. Oh, everybody's selling miniatures on Etsy. Yeah. Well, we could get some sculptors to make custom miniatures for us. Okay, awesome, cool. And Amy's like, well, if we're already making miniatures, we might as well make a game. And there you go. That's how the business started.
My goodness. My goodness. From pandemic to lavender farm to game. That's a pretty direct correlate. Route right there.
At first it was going to be a game that was more fantasy related.
Sci-fi, dreams.
But then we joke around about how flowers kind of take over everything and botany.
Yeah, and botany came along. Yeah, so
and took over.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the way we run our businesses, like we could put anything on top of the framework and the structure that we have. And we've been playing games together since we were kids. And so it just was like, we finally kind of were like, okay, well, we dipped our toe into the retail space with our farm. We were making, still
flower
technically
presses.
they're on hibernation while the games are going, but we manufacture flower presses, really nice ones out of like walnut and brass and everything. And so we decided that, okay, well, we kind of have a handle on this. Well, we could probably figure out how to make games too. And that was, that was still its own learning curve, but we didn't just come out of the blue. Like we sort of evolved into it over time.
Of course. Yeah. But going from fantasy to festooning, would have probably been an interesting journey that I'd love to dig into. But before that, Warhammer and Dominion. You guys mentioned these two games that most everyone who'd be listening to this has probably heard of. But let's start with Dominion. Talk to me about it. Like, why do you love it, and what's special about it?
Probably that it's quick to play, and we like getting our family together, mostly like my brothers whenever they come.
It's easy to teach to people. Yeah. Like, so we have friends over we've been doing this. We've been playing Dominion since the early 2000s. Yeah. I'm not even sure when it came out. Whenever it came out, we got it like shortly after it came out.
And we have all the expansions.
Yeah. And so it's super easy. Like, hey, sit down at the table. Here's how you play. You draw the cards.
And just read what it does.
You read what it does. You buy the thing and you're just trying to get as many points as you can. Go, and so it's just been like our default go-to for so long. I think it's so interesting. Like every game is so interesting, even if you play the same cards over and over again.
And you can use the different cards and make different random decks.
Everyone in our family has a reputation for like how they play. So like we know that Amy's turns are going to be like.
I always have to do all the cards. like get down
Bring-
my whole deck.
bring a
Sometimes they're
book-
like,
yeah,
oh
bring
my
a
gosh,
book.
how long's it gonna take?
Amy's turn is going to be like 2 or 3 minutes. Find something else to do while you wait for her. Like,
I like
so-
those smithies.
Yeah. One of her brothers will always grab attack cards. Always. Like,
So, what about Dominion do you think makes it special compared to like the plethora of other card games out there?
I mean, it was a first of its kind, really, that we were aware of, at least. You know, maybe other things came before that had some element here or there, but we had never experienced anything like that before.
Dusty plays Magic, but it's more like you don't have to collect the cards.
Yeah, so it's a lot of the similar feel and concept of like creating combos and working off of probabilities, like that you're going to pull certain cards, and you know, it's almost like drafting in Magic.
Yeah,
And-
my approach is much simpler. I just go for the smithies.
Yeah,
and
she gets
the-
smithies and
the
villages.
markets.
Yeah, villages and markets. She goes for anything that gives her more drawing, which is fine. It's a strategy and it works. She does win. Probably more than I do. But which means I'm probably overanalyzing it. But I just think that, you know, the thing for me that's super unique about it is that you get a box and it has 300 something cards in it. But rather than having to know all 300 of those cards, because I also love Star Realms, but Star Realms is everything's in one deck, and there's just a few of you. And the way they do the stacks, I think, is so unique. And it's so unique that nobody has even come along and tried to do the same thing and had good success
or
with
that
it.
we've seen.
Or that we've seen, anyways.
Yeah.
But just the way they have, you know, you have these 30 cards and you take 10 stacks of them, and that's your game. And then the permutations of that just in one box, it's like endless value. And you know, add the expansions and it gets even crazier, because now how many expansions do we have? 12, 14, 15?
We have them all.
We have them all. And there's 20 to 30 new cards in each of those, and each of them is a stack of 10. And now you're never, I mean, you could play, I mean, gosh, we could play every day and not play the same game twice, right? So I think that's just really neat, really cool. It's efficient from a business and an art perspective for sure. Like,
Yeah, we're like,
Yeah.
they only have to have a budget for so few artworks.
yeah, 30 pieces of art for one big box. Yeah. Well, plus a few other things, but I mean, that to me is the combo that just neat.
I know
and
how
then,
many like artworks does like Magic have to have?
oh
So many.
gosh, in any given set they have something
Always-
like
always
250
expanding
unique,
all
yeah,
the time.
250
So
unique
high.
cards, and they do 4 mainline sets in standard every year, plus all the side stuff, plus all the Pioneer and everything else. Yeah, I have no idea. It's a different ball game.
But it is interesting how like Dominion is, at least it comes across as one of these games that feels like quite a niche specialized and maybe like strategic game that you probably have to learn and work on for years, but in reality, as soon as you start playing, it's actually quite straightforward, and
The design
it
is
seems
brilliant.
to have this nice balance.
Yeah. I mean, you can take somebody who doesn't play games and say, just do what the card says. And you can watch them over the course of the game begin to realize of the subset of cards that have been placed in front of them for that game, which ones are good, which ones are going to do the things they want them to do, how they can get more money. Like, you can watch people learn as they play. And it's
And
just,
we've got really fast with my brothers and stuff. They know how to play.
oh yeah, we're just flipping cards all over the place, shuffle, flip, your turn, shuffle, flip, going around the
Except
circle.
for my turn.
Sometimes
Down,
so
down,
fast that
down,
I
down,
haven't
down.
finished shuffling and drawing my cards before it's like my turn's coming around again. It's just it never gets boring, ever. I don't think I've ever been bored playing Dominion. I don't think I've ever finished a game and said, "No, I'm good for a week." Like, so many games, and I understand why games do this, where they have like a few symbols or they have like keywords and you got to know what they mean. And Dominion relies on none of that, right? It's just like, it's everything you need to know is on the cards in front of you.
And that's one of the things we like, and we kind of pulled in
Yeah.
and made sure that botany was easy. Like, you don't have to go look at a symbol.
Yeah, that you don't need to know, you don't need to understand a definition of something, especially because for our games we target like a lighter audience for the same thing, where you could take people who never play board games or who rarely play board games and sit down. So people ask us, they're like, "What games inspired botany?" I'm like, "Dominion inspired botany," and they're like, "It has nothing to do with Dominion," and I'm like, "Yeah, but the underlying concepts are what it is." So like, we for our games we want somebody. and I would say that our games are slightly more complicated than Dominion, but you could still sit a person down who doesn't play games and say, you put the thing here, you do this, read what it says on the card, go, and that's what we're aiming for, is that kind of ease. So I think Dominion's just the right combination of quick, easy to put on the table, fun, never gets boring. Like, it's got everything going for it.
Well, then, going from something that is well thought out, expansion based, to something like Warhammer that is
It's the exact opposite.
It's the exact opposite.
It's easy to teach, though.
Well, I think Warhammer is actually easy. So so it took a long time for me to come to Warhammer, because when I was a kid, my parents would not allow me to play it. It was too expensive. That it just wouldn't happen. And my friends were all in the same boat, and so we all played BattleTech. And now, as a game designer, I realize that BattleTech is like infinitely more complicated than Warhammer. Warhammer still takes a long time to learn. The rulebook is still big. The product range is so vast that you don't even know where to start. And figuring out where to start is also sort of difficult until you know how to know where to start, and then you could teach someone else. But I didn't have any,
choosing your first
army, like what to do. And this is only the gameplay we're talking about right now. And for Warhammer, but Warhammer, it's like, how many dice do you roll? Pick them up, roll them. How many of them hit? Roll them again. Hand the dice to your opponent. They roll to see how many wounds it takes. The gameplay is actually pretty straightforward, and it's all the edge cases. But like in BattleTech, you got your abacus, and you're checking the stars, and you got to do all your modifiers, and maybe it ran too fast, or maybe it didn't run fast enough, and then you're doing all this stuff, and it all comes down, and then you pick up 2 dice and you roll them, and I'm like, Warhammer basically accomplishes the same thing with 50 dice, which is actually less complicated than having 2 dice in Battle. So we played BattleTech for years, and then I played X-Wing and Imperial Assault and all kinds of miniature games. And eventually, when I decided I was going to paint Warhammer miniatures, Warhammer, I was like, you know what? I'm an adult now. My parents can't tell me that I can't do this. Yeah, I'm a grown-up. I can make these decisions for myself. I'm a
40-year-old, and I want to buy any toys I want.
I want to buy all the toys I want. That's how I came into Warhammer. And I just think it's the most amazing game. I've been playing it for a couple years now. It's like a hobby. It's like a never-ending. It's like how Dominion does it in one box. Warhammer does it with the entire product line. You can never get bored. I saw there's like 300 and something books on the short list of books you should read. Right? You're never like, I will not finish those in my lifetime. There's armies to collect. You got more things to paint and build, and you're building stuff and you're painting stuff, and you're super invested in the little.
Every Saturday they come up with something new.
Yeah, every Saturday there's something new, and I swear I'm not going to buy it, and then I buy it, and
because your parents aren't there.
Because my parents aren't there to tell me it's too expensive, and the love and care you put into. So like, I've been working on an Adeptus Custodes army, and Sisters of Silence. Little bitty throwaway figures, almost no points in the game. They're going to be dead on turn 1 if they even make it to your first turn. If you go second, they're going to be dead before you even get to play with them. And I spend like weeks painting them, building them. And I've never had a game product where like you have such a hand in the creation of this thing that when you put it on the table, you feel like a level of pride about having done it. Even though I'm a bad painter, I'm unabashedly proud of my bad job that I've done.
You do a fine job.
Yeah, it's a whole experience, like a whole experience. And so, yeah, it's a quick to the table. Nope. But like, hey, I'm going to work on this for months. That'll keep me busy. Like,
and has your interest in Warhammer like gotten you then curious about other miniature based games, or is there something, or is the fact that it is all encompassing one of the reasons why you stick with Warhammer?
I mean, I've been playing miniatures since the age of like 8.
Oh yeah, you have so many miniatures.
I have so many. And so what I have been doing is I have been dancing my way around Warhammer.
You have what, like Monster Hunter?
Yeah, I got
He-Man.
the new Monster Hunter, He-Man,
all the Star Wars ones.
Yeah, I've been playing and then even back in like high school and college. So we started with BattleTech, but then we started playing Mage Knight and HeroClix. And so the concepts are not particularly new. but it was always like it was always that pinnacle of like I can't touch this because it's too expensive.
And they have the best
And it's really
miniatures.
not. They do have the best miniatures. Their miniatures are incredible. And actually one of the guys that does sales for us used to work for, actually both the guys that do sales for us used to work for Games Workshop, but one of them actually was like involved in like working, like managing the factory and stuff. And I'm like always asking him questions like, how do they get this level of detail, right? Like how can you see the the knuckles on their gloves and the little ridges and everything like that. And it's just incredible what they accomplish with those. So yeah, so I can always be convinced to buy another miniatures game, but I think I sort of worked my way into war, and now my kids are spoiled because they're gonna get to do Warhammer from the time that they're like little kids, and they're not gonna have this story when they grow up.
They'll be able to have different ones though, no doubt. So then shifting towards your games, you guys collaborated on obviously Botany, and there was a story about discovering, starting off thinking about making a fantasy game, and then flowers came and sidetracked you, right? I guess first off though, describe the game for us. Describe what happens in Botany.
So actually the story of how Botany came to be sort of also comes into play there. So we were standing in the kitchen and Amy goes, we had discovered that our other game,
It's
miniatures,
quite expensive to make
super
miniatures.
expensive, like $2,000 a character to develop it. I wanted 20 characters in the base game. That's already a huge budget.
And artwork takes a long time.
And sculpting takes a long time. You got to pay for tooling at the manufacturer. Like we realized real fast that this was a very involved and expensive process.
And we are very business minded.
Yeah, and Amy comes in the
Or he
kitchen one
is.
morning and she says, "So I have an idea for a game about pressing flowers." Which I'm like, okay, well, that's on brand for us.
I'm like, "You're a
we manufacture.
Victorian flower hunter." He's like, "Tell me more."
I'm like, yeah, what's the story here? And she's like, well, these dudes used to go all over the planet
on these
and
crazy expeditions.
they'd be missing eyes, and they would have falcons, and they'd be falling in pit traps of bulls, and I'm like, this sounds like Indiana Jones. And she's like, yeah, but they were looking for flowers. And I'm like, okay, there's other
Portable greenhouses.
Yeah, there's other alternative like theming games that have become popular over the last few years. Like, for a long time it was like, even Dominion, which was a light game, was fantasy based. Small World, light game, fantasy based. But in the last 10 years or so, that you got Wingspan, Azul, like all these sort of more like the themes are broadening, right? And so I thought, okay, that could work pretty well. That sounds like a good idea. And I was like, well, what's the gameplay? And she's like, well, they traveled the world. And we were like, and so this,
and then we were like, well, also at the time, these Wardian cases are like terrariums, like increase the likelihood that your plants would survive
by a lot. And so
then you would also press your flowers to make herbariums.
Yeah. So what you are is you're a Victorian plant hunter. You're going all over the world. You have these targets. So you're like, oh, I need to go to
Argentina to get this. That's
Chile.
Not on. Argentina's not on the map, is it?
I think it is. I don't know. We have 51 spaces.
If not, then expansion.
Yeah, exactly. I need to go to France. I need to go to South Africa, Cape Colony, as they called it. I need to go to California and find these things. And so you go, you find them, you put them in your Wardian case, and it's all about like budget and efficiency. Because back then they couldn't, they didn't have ATM card. Whatever they left with, that money they left their home with, that's what they had. And so you got to figure out how to get out there, get back, hire crew.
And the farther away plants are worth more money. And then we were like, let's add some sabotaging.
Yeah, and all these
for my brother.
And Amy's telling all these events about, or like all these crazy stories, and I'm like, well, this sounds like random, events that happened to these guys, and they were super random. And so then it was all about like, well, how do they mitigate those events? They'd take rope and a shotgun, and they'd hire a bodyguard, and they'd have a pack mule, and it was all about preparing for this stuff.
Some of their expeditions had like 200 people on them. Like it was insane, and they would last years.
And some of them, it was just the one guy, and he like gets dragged back into town by a camel, like, and he's almost nearly dead. Like, yeah, the things that these guys went through for these flowers. So that's where that came from. We didn't know what we had. We had the game within a week of,
and then we were also like, well, how are we going to get the art? And I'm like, well, I love historical botanical artwork.
Amy did art history in college, so she knows all the art super well, or how to look for it and find it too. And
historical public domain art.
So the art's been done for like 200 years.
We don't have to wait for artists.
So we had the game all put together within a few weeks, like 90% done. And then, you know, obviously there was play testing and refining and tweaking and putting all the art together, but the actual game itself was like playable within a few days. And it just took off from there. Yeah.
And so when you were in the midst of this adrenaline-filled development cycle, how did you then think about, you know, you were mentioning a few things there. There was like the fundamental going out and trying to get these different flowers. You have potentially some sabotage going on. There's prep. There's managing resources. How did the combination of this is the fundamental like narrative that we want to be telling, and these are effective mechanics that might suit those different elements. How did that conversation go out? Was it very much like we should have some sabotage? Let's look up a list of mechanics that we like, or what was that creative process like?
So there's two directions to design a game, and I feel like the most common one, based on just everybody I talk to, is they start with a mechanic and an idea, and then they come up with a theme that fits it. We go the exact opposite direction.
I'm not very mechanically inclined.
Yeah, and neither are our customers. You know, the large amount of our customers, since we have this product that sort of has reached outside the hobby. A lot of people, you know, we don't say we have a pick up and deliver game with tableau building, which is a phrase I did not even learn until Botany was for sale on Kickstarter. When someone else described it that way, we start with the story and then we see what could make sense. So it's like Amy's like, okay, it's plant hunters. They're collecting flowers. Neat. Sounds like we have cards of flowers and we're coming up with some way to collect them. They traveled the world. Well, that sounds like it's played on a world map. Okay, they have targets. Okay, they need to get to some place. Well, how did they get to how did they get to places? They needed money. Okay, cool. So maybe let's try to come up with some sort of budgeting system where they leave and that's all the money they have, and maybe they can earn more money by doing things. And she's like, and then all this random stuff happened to them. Okay, great. I know that there are certain elements on specific websites out there that when they hear the word random, they lose their minds, but that's what happened.
It's like random.
It's random. So we have an event system. Okay, we pull an event card. And there's two ways that each could go, good or bad. And that, okay, but how, but now what did these people do? Like, they didn't know they're going to run into pirates, but they certainly thought I could run into something pirate adjacent. What do I do about this? Well, I take a shotgun, I hire a good crew. And so, okay, now we have items in the game. Okay, neat. So now we have this, we got to get around the world. You got to do it efficiently. You got to spend your money. And then they would bring them home. And when they brought them home, that was how they earned their prestige. They go to the Botanical Society and they're like,
reputation.
Look what I got. Yeah, reputation. Prestige is Le Fleur. Reputation is Botany. They do two functionally completely different things, but the name is there. And so then they would come home and they'd put them in orangeries and conservatories. Okay, cool. What if we had a way to build up your thing, gain reputation, your estate?
Going back out getting more.
Yeah. And so then from there, it was just a matter of like, okay, then we get into the finer details. Like when we first started, you could only move one space a turn. And
this is taking
too long. We need to speed this up. Okay, let's move more spaces per turn. Oh, okay, you
can collect more flowers than one per turn.
People aren't buying enough items. What do we do about that? Well, we make the items more attractive and we start pulling the levers and turning the knobs and seeing, okay, well, this one's too powerful. Increase the cost, and so it's all just little things like that.
I don't like the flower cards I have. Can I swap them out when I'm at the estate?
And we also think about so we have a super fan that we have named Mary, and she's effectively Amy, but we know what she likes and what her friends like and what she's frustrated by and what gets her to play a game. And so when we're designing the games, then we start, if Amy, we used to be in the very beginning, Amy would be like, I don't like this. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. This is great. We should do this. And then I realized, hang on, if Amy doesn't like this, Mary doesn't like this. So what do we do? How do we change this? What do we make happen? Le Fleur, people call it a worker placement game. It's not a worker placement game. You have workers, you are placing them, and that's where the similarity ends. Worker placement games have very specific things around location scarcity and whatnot.
And blocking.
And Amy hates that. Amy hates worker placement games, and then the second game we make is a quote worker placement game. But really what it is it's just a really easy way to represent your options each turn and keep track of those and how many you have. And so instead we came up with more clever ways to create scarcity where the first person to a space gets their pick of whatever's available, but then and then the next person there, well, the first person took the best thing maybe, and so the next person doesn't quite get, but there's never any blocking. And so when we're doing that, then when we're coming up with all this story and we're working backwards into the mechanics and then we're trying to refine them, we also try to think about okay, but is it fun? by the way, we were talking about Warhammer. And I know there's plenty of toxicity online about Warhammer, but man, if there was ever a crew of people that was like, what's the most fun thing we could do right now? Let's do that, right? No, like, oh, is it, this balanced? They work towards balance. I'm not going to say they don't, but like, they're more like, they're just concerned about like, what is fun and what do our fans want? And that's what we try to take to our games too.
And also, whenever we're designing a game, we have to find the art first.
Yes, that's another one that I have not met anybody that does.
So we're like, I have to be able to find and source this historical art. What can I use, and how can we use it?
Or like, I'm envisioning a concept where we have, like for Le Fleur, where we have 100 garden features. And Amy's like, that's cool. I can only find 50. We're like, okay, well, the version where we need 100 is not going to work then, is it? We need to find it. We need to refine this so that we can do 50 because that's all the art that's currently available.
It feels like there's like combinations of factors here. There's like self-imposed or externally imposed constraints that you're working in, which oftentimes develops then the creativity. There's like narrative-driven mechanic design. What is the most fun way of being able to envision this? And then to what degree did you then refine or change based off of playtesting, of seeing people like when someone playtests or was playtesting Botany, were you watching them closely to just see what elements they might not be having as much fun as you were, like in order to kind of try and check that bias and separate Mary from Amy, or was it mostly pretty well formed and the playtesting bore that out? Does that make sense?
I think we hit our own frustrations in Botany pretty fast, and so by the time we got to playtesting with other people, it was there wasn't that much that had to change. Le Fleur didn't change drastically, but it had some big little changes in it that made all the difference. And those we found during playtesting where we found like, oh, somebody's getting frustrated because they can't get the cards they need. Well, there's a super easy pressure release valve there where we make it so if you can inefficiently spend multiple cards to equal another card, like when you're spending your flowers in order to buy a garden feature.
And originally we had our visitors. Maybe we should tell what Le Fleur is.
Oh, so in Le Fleur.
So yeah, I would love to now kind of shift into what is Le Fleur. How did that come about? Where in the world did you get that theme?
Yeah. Well, okay. So Le Fleur is all about you're building your garden in Rococo,
and a
France.
lot of people from Botany were like, I wish I could build this garden more.
Yeah, because
like,
in Botany you just grab a few garden features and there's sort of like a way to give you extra points based on what you have. But the focus is still the flowers. And so we were kind of like, Amy's like, well, I want to make a game about Rococo France. And also we have a ton of people asking that they want to be able to focus on just building out their garden. Almost like a subset of, like you play Star Wars Armada, which is all the big ships. And then, like, if you're real hardcore, then every time you get into a skirmish with fighters, you pull up an X-Wing game and you play the whole X-Wing game as a skirmish with fighters, and then you go back. So it's like, okay, zooming into the garden. And we're like, well, why are these people building their gardens? And Amy had the idea of, like, what if there's garden parties and every round visitors are coming to town and you're trying to have, like, Jean-Pierre likes architecture and Henriette likes fountains the best, and so she's going to go to the party with the best fountains because she thinks they make her eyes look nice or something. We have all these. And so you're building your garden up, and then at the end of every round, there's visitors who have come to town that round, and everybody's jockeying to see who has the best architecture to get Jean-Pierre and who has the best paths to get Miss Amélie and all this stuff. And so that one, it's more like Botany's pretty linear. It's a race. This one, it's more like a matrix where everybody's competing over like who can get this garden feature or this on the board and all this stuff. And so that's where we started to, there were so many more permutations of how, like, the gameplay is still simple, but the permutations. On Board Game Design Lab, we once heard this a game theory thing where he's like, well, if you have a deck of 20 cards, there's 20 things that can happen. But if you split that deck in half and you take 10 combo with 10, you have 100 things that can happen. And that's what happens with Le Fleur, is there's so many more things that could happen that we started when we were doing the play testing. We started to see, like I said about the cards, like, people are frustrated. They want to be able to, when they can't get what they want an out. And maybe that's a less efficient out. It's punishing to have to do that, but it's still a pressure release valve, right? And so what Amy was talking about is in the beginning, we were trying to save, we only had so many character art. And so we were trying to make it so everybody got a visitor that was just their character. And that person gave them their visitor bonus every round. And it got confusing. People were confused that there wasn't a real clear line between why do I have this visitor and why are these other visitors coming and everything. And so then we came up with dedicated character cards.
And then also another thing is I like flowers, obviously. And people wanted to be able to get more flowers. And so for our characters that you get, there's also kind of a little engine building where you can get more flowers each round if you have something specific.
And the people playtesting this have never played an engine builder in their life. And they're going, oh, that's neat. If I get more flowers, I get more things. And we're like, see, we are learning. We're easing you into strategy here.
And then also why we chose Rococo. One of our favorite, or one of our, doesn't care. One of my favorite, like, botanical artist is it Pierre Joseph Redoute?
Yeah.
He's from that time period. And so I could just pull all of his artwork. And then also I took art history. And so I love like the bright over the top, like pastel colors and gold. It must have gold,
yeah.
right?
It feels very kind of Gilded Age type, precursor to that. But yeah, that's very cool. I mean, I'm sure Dusty cares because you care.
Yeah.
You know what's actually really funny is I would never.
Do you like Pierre Joseph Redoute?
I would never have said I like Pierre Joseph Redoute, but I like him because Amy likes him. Like, thank you, sir. And like, these games, like if you said, what game are you going to design? In the absence of Amy, I would never have designed these games. But my gosh, I'm heavily involved in these other genres and I see the community around them and everything is like scrutiny and lots of toxicity. Not that it's the majority, but there is a massively a vocal minority that is very toxic about
Botany
stuff.
Too.
A little bit. But our fans are so over the top about like how great this is and how, and they hardly play games. And so they're,
they play it every weekend.
They come in with fresh eyes and, some of these people have played Botany more in the last 2 months than we have. That's for sure.
I mean, we've played it a lot, but yeah, they're like, I
just
play
recently,
it every
yeah,
day.
since we've been working on our other games, yeah, they're like, I've played it, I played it 5 times this week. I'm like, that's 5 more times than I played Botany this week. Jeez. Exactly. And so, like, I have, like, within a matter of weeks, especially once the Kickstarter started for Botany, like, I'm like, you know what, this is great. Like,
I'm for Le Fleur.
Or for Botany when we Kickstarted and we started to see the response, and I was like, oh, this is so great. Like, these people love it, and it made, and I was like, I'm gonna design games like this forever. Like, this is such a great fan base to be a part of. Like,
so obviously you get excited when fans get excited, and I guess the idea of Botany being someone else's dominion is kind of cool.
It is neat.
I never thought I would have fangirls, but apparently I have fangirls.
Yeah,
we got fangirls.
People are coming up to Amy, they're like, I can't believe I'm meeting you, and I'm like, well, she's here. Like, yeah, this is, walk into Target and nobody cares, and people are coming up to her at Gamma and stuff and go like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm meeting you.
And like, this is the prettiest game ever. I'm like, well, I like pretty games. I wanted to create a pretty game.
So that has definitely been interesting.
It does seem like Le Fleur is kind of like an evolution from the fan base of Botany and the kind of not feedback, but like, oh, wouldn't it be great if? Is that then just kind of shifting into like the business side of things? Is that then your goal for Dux Somnium? Like, is it to develop for this? Like, is this Mary's studio?
The joke has been that we make games for gamers' spouses. And I find that to be like super accurate, like really accurate. Like I've gotten so many comments from gamers and they're like, I could never get my family to play anything with me. And my wife's playing with me and my sister's playing with me. My mom's playing with me and they're all getting closer because they love it. And, and I'm more than happy to play it because we try to design, coming from the background we have where we played like the full breadth of like simple to complicated games. We tried to design it simple to teach like Dominion, but enough things that you can do with your mind in there that keeps even,
Dusty enjoys it.
Yeah. And so that like hardcore gamers are also like mentally engaged and enjoying themselves.
It's a game that brings people to the table.
So yeah, I have
other people that don't play.
Yeah, I have no desire to leave the market niche. we've made 2 flower-based games, and so the one more game we're working on is actually themed off of Botany. It's a totally different game, but it takes place in Botany's world, and it's in a smaller box. But the next big game we're working on for next year is same target
Flavor?
gamer, same flavor, still using the historic art that we like so much, but the theme is sort of sliding away from flowers. Amy will still find a way to get flowers and stuff in there. We're not ready to like say what the theme is publicly yet, but the idea is that we're sort of shifting the Venn diagram. So we have this market that we're really performing well in, and then slide it over just a little bit and grab other people who maybe don't think of flowers first, but like, kind of like some of the stuff that's adjacent to what we're working on, but also is still interesting to them and pulls our existing market into that too. So we have Amy cannot stop creating. She's a creator. I'm very like systems and business oriented, and so like give me a creator and I can teach him how to make money forever. And Amy has like 30 game ideas that she's already come up with, and we could start any of them tomorrow. We could start 20 of the 30 tomorrow pretty easily. And so it's just and so we have thinking of our greater like Venn diagram and the market like we're kind of working towards. We have a whole lot of overlapping pieces of a bigger Venn diagram that we will continue sort of sliding and shifting into to develop our market, so we're not stagnating like it's another flower game, and like it's beautiful and I love it, but I have 2 flower games and maybe I need to buy something else this month. Like, and so that way
we will still make flower games.
We'll still make flower games. Yeah. Like I said, one of the 2, we're working on 2 right now. And one of them is another Botany kind of flower game, but the other one is like shifting that Venn diagram over a bit so that we're sort of expanding the theming within the audience. As far as the audience itself goes, we like our other game, our fantasy sci-fi game is still technically in development. I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day. It's just going to be a passion project. Like, I think if we had started with that, that's a very crowded market, and it's like okay to enter that market, but you got to understand when you're entering that market that it's crowded, right? And so you meanwhile over here in Botany land, that's an underserved market, right? There's not a lot of people making games specifically targeted for girls who want a pretty game that girls and guys who want a pretty game that is light and fun, that that does these things and ticks these boxes, and so,
like we're getting
but also has some opportunity for strategy and
yeah,
and we're getting lots of requests for like Botany to be in like flower shops, like and
and tell me my sci-fi fantasy game would ever be picked up by flower shops. Somebody bought Botany from a sporting goods store the other day and was telling us about it. And I'm like, I didn't even know they store carried games, and they're like, they don't. They just carry Botany because they thought it was relevant to this section they had. Like,
well, this sounds like an opportunity for slightly expanding the Venn diagram into exobotany, and then that kind of
exactly. Somebody, one of our we have a big Facebook group, and one of our fans said that the other day. They were like, we need aliens in Botany, like
alien
plants. Just a steampunkish Victorian futurist.
You're going around the world looking for
exobotany.
UFO crash sites. It'll be like
not?
XCOM.
Why not? You decided to go to launch Botany on Kickstarter, and you kind of decided the self-funding route. Talk to me about that. Like what went into that as a decision versus trying to pitch it to publishers?
We didn't
gonna like this answer.
It never occurred to us not to do it ourselves since we run our own businesses.
We never even knew that people published games.
I didn't know that people sold game designs to other people. Like we have tons of games here, and I thought Alan R. Moon works for Asmodee. He is an employee, right? They say, or like Philip Kiart, or however you correctly pronounce the game, of the guy that makes Dominion. I just assumed he was an employee of Rio Grande. Right? I didn't know that people design games and sold them to publishers. And
since we own our own businesses, we like to have control.
It just never even crossed our minds that anybody else would make it. That this, we'll do this, and we'll figure out how to manufacture it, and we'll carry the stock, and we'll figure out how to fulfill it, and all that stuff. So we had to learn the whole industry, but.
And then also, my brother had done a Kickstarter several years ago.
2014, he did one. So this was very early in Kickstarter. And he made $27,000, which blew our mind. He does video games. just blew our minds wide open that was even a thing that people did and it was possible. And so that was the first thing we thought was, oh yeah, let's make a game. Oh, let's take it to Kickstarter. We didn't want to dip into our savings and our other businesses in order to manufacture this thing. So we needed some funding to get it off the ground that way.
I mean, and we did end up dipping into our stuff, but
once we saw that.
So we actually, you Googled how to Kickstart?
I literally Googled how to Kickstarter, and that was how I found LaunchBoom. And then LaunchBoom helps with all the pre-campaign marketing, and then everything sort of took off from there, where then, LaunchBoom helped us find our manufacturer, and we started looking at other people's Kickstarters, and we found Golden Goose, who is our sales guys, and they also help us figure out all our logistics. And then they help us find Diamond, which is our fulfillment company in the US. And we, through LaunchBoom, I was looking at somebody else's campaign, and we started to see Ori Kagan's stuff for all the videos he was doing, and we went and looked him up in more detail, and it all just sort of started from, Googling how to Kickstart and finding experts.
Actually, whenever we Googled that, we were working on the other game too, and then we switched.
And when we started with LaunchBoom, we were still working on our other game, and then that was like October of 20 something, 22. And then in January, I emailed LaunchBoom. I'm like, hey, so we have this other game, and it's ready. It's gonna be ready to go to market in months, not years. Do you mind if we switch? And they were like, oh yeah, no problem. You're doing your project. That it's just the project. So yeah, go ahead and switch over to this other game. And then it all just sort of spiraled out from there.
You hear a lot of people when they're talking about Kickstarter and launching on Kickstarter, especially people who haven't done it before. They go into it thinking, okay, I'm gonna put it on Kickstarter, and the crowd is going to just take it off.
I'm gonna make a great product, and the world's gonna beat its way to my door, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And oftentimes, and other game designers that I've interviewed have been like this too. They're surprised at how it doesn't work that way. And the coming from tech background, an overnight success is usually 5 years in the making. It's that kind of a thought. And so when you did it, it sounds like you did a lot of research into how to actually go on Kickstarter properly and launch properly. What then made you decide? Because you guys have run businesses before. You're probably relatively confident in your ability to learn things quickly and go. What made you think, it's actually quite important to get some pay for help, right? Or engage with folks that and not just do it all yourself, even though I know you are doing it yourself. What went into that thinking? Was it a time a time benefit, a learning deficit? What motivated you to work with partners like LaunchBoom?
So this is a concept we've dealt with for a long time. So in our photo business, could we hand bind albums ourselves? We could, but is there a company out there that will do it faster and better, and they're the experts? And do I want to be a person, known as the photographer who hand binds albums himself? I do not. I have no interest in doing that. There's this concept called wealth dynamics that we have known about for a long time, and you can go take the test online. But if you just read their spiral, you can kind of figure out pretty well who you are. And it's all about focusing on the things you're good at, and then having other people. No, I hesitate to say pay, but the reality is you pay for other people. But you can find people who will do these things for free or for equity or whatever works for you, who are good at the other things you don't want to do or are not good at. And then your path to success, to wealth, is by focusing on what you're good at. Amy is a creator. She cannot stop creating. Anything where Amy is not creating is not the most optimal use of her time. We need to get that away from her. Sometimes I have to get her to focus on creating the things she's already created.
Well, I just want to go create.
She wants to create
else.
even more. And so that when people play test, they're like, I can't believe you had all this art and everything and all the graphic design and everything done. And I'm like, Amy was bored, so she just did all the creation. She just kept creating, and I just couldn't get to the play test in time before she had created. So she's creator. On this wealth dynamics, mine is called a lord. I think that's sort of a hoity-toity name. It's effectively the person that runs the business.
He likes making systems.
I like making systems. I like making spreadsheets. I like managing all this stuff.
Telling me what to do.
Telling Amy what we should be working on. Yeah, even though I'm like, you should not be creating that right now.
And then I won't listen to
him.
Yeah,
go create this other thing. And so that's what I'm really good at. Both of us hate sales. We are not salespeople. So we found Golden Goose. Chris at Golden Goose could sell anything. When he talks, he's like weaving magic into the air. Everything he's saying is the truth. Everything he's saying is the same truth I would say, but when he does it, it just sounds beautiful, right? He's selling.
And he's probably really enjoying saying it.
He loves it. Loves it. My dad is a trader, and these are all terms from wealth dynamics. He cannot stop trading. He was
buying and selling.
He was one of the top real estate. He was actually the top real estate agent in the world for Century 21 when I was a kid, for multiple years. You know, I want to get rid of a car. I'm like, yeah, dealership, take it. And he's like, how could you do that? You could have traded it. He's like out there talking to people. He's got it listed in a million places. And once
we told him we wanted a trailer, and then he started looking up all these trailers.
Yeah, anytime I need to finance something, I go talk to my dad, and he's already trading. He's already out there trading. And so you find out what you're good at, and then you go find people who do the things you're not good at. I'm not good at fulfillment. I hire a fulfillment. I'm not good at marketing. I hire Launchboom. I hire Gelb. I go to Kickstarter, which is itself its own marketing platform. I talk to people who are good at marketing. I'm not good at manufacturing. We have Panda. They're our manufacturer, right? And having done those things, you have to be careful because when you start, you don't have a lot of money. And when we started with Botany, we had to have a plan that was scalable so that because we didn't know how popular Botany would be, if we sold 100 of them, we would still make a profit. You do not have permission to lose money. If we sold 100 of them, we make a profit. If we sold 15,000 like we did, now we're up into the 30,000 range. You know, scales, doesn't matter. Le Fleur, people were like, well, how good is Le Fleur going to do? And I'm like, I'm planning for $22,000. Like, that's what I'm planning for Le Fleur. And they're like, well, what if it doesn't do as well as Botany? It doesn't matter because I'm not predicting that. I'm predicting that it will make $22,000. That's where my plan starts. And then it scales from there. And
I was going to say anyway, for how we chose Launchboom, we're like, Dusty asked them a bazillion questions.
A million. I feel bad for Maria. Yeah.
And so we thought about it a lot, and we're like, well, how much does the median Kickstarter make with you guys, and blah blah blah.
She said, and they at the time it was 55,000 was like that. The across all their games, that was the average they made. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, we spend $5,000, we make 55. Manufacturing cost us 22. We spend some money on marketing. We are still in the black on that math.
And then we have extra games we can sell and make more money.
Yeah, and then so we knew that if we hit our minimum order quantity, that would take about 500 backers, and we would have 1,500 games left over because our minimum order quantity was 2,000. Well, I can take those 15 games, and at $60 a pop, or if I'm selling them $30 a pop to wholesale, I can make X amount of extra dollars. And so that was what we knew going in, that we were safe to hire people because the money that we were going to make having hired them was going to exceed. Nothing's guaranteed, but that if we made no money off of hiring Launchboom, that's okay. We lost the money, but oh well.
It wasn't that much.
We're not going to lose our house, right? But the potential to make more money there far exceeds that. And so when you're looking for experts, by the way, the internet is full of people who give free advice. So you don't have to start at paying people. You could go find Board Game Design Lab or whatever.
And you also don't have to listen to every advice they give you.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, some of the things we've heard on Board Game Design Lab, we're like, thank God nobody told us before we made a game.
Yeah, we're actually somewhat glad that we didn't.
We went in totally blind.
Yeah.
But that's a very long-winded answer about how we figure out where to start with our experts and who to hire.
Not necessarily blind, but with a different perspective.
Fresh.
Yeah, it's like kind of Dunning-Kruger, Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yep.
The less you know about something, the more confidence that you have in it. You start off that kind of Mount Stupid, and then you fall into the Valley of Despair. But if you actually start at Mount Stupid and just be like, yeah, well, how hard could it be? Like maybe that's, it lets you make the decisions that you later would know that you would have regretted if you had known what you knew now, but you're glad you did them anyway.
I mean, there's some things that we have done differently, but again, the armor against all that, the shield that protects you from that, is just doing the math. And so Amy and I, you wouldn't know it.
Gold coins.
Yeah, so we're pretty risk averse, and we're not afraid to take calculated risks, but we don't gamble on anything ever. And so we never spend money where we're like, God, this has to work or we're going to be in trouble. We always do, what's the worst case scenario? Okay, well, if I spend, so like our gold or our metal coins that we did for Botany's campaign, we agonized over those. And we knew that we were going to have to invest $6,000 in manufacturing them.
For minimum quantity.
For our minimum order quantity. And we're like, okay, well, what's the worst thing that's going to happen here? The worst thing that's going to happen is we'll sell 5 of them. because selling 0 is actually better because you don't have to buy them. But we'll sell 5, and we got to then we got to order 500 of them, and then we're gonna spend $6,000 on metal coins, and our kids are gonna have the most incredible treasure hunt they've ever had on the farm. We'll just scatter them in the creek. It doesn't matter. They can go dive for them. But if that happens, be fine. We'll be fine. Yeah, it sucks. We lost $6,000. Yeah, it sucks. We have a whole bunch of coins that didn't sell, but we're not going to lose our house, and we'll still be able to buy food, and it will be fine. Had the answer been, what happens if we lose that $6,000 while our house is going to be in danger? Doesn't happen. That's a gamble. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And that's how we approached everything. And then with the metal coins, we ended up selling.
We're sold out now.
We're sold out, and we ended up selling like 6,000 copies of them, and we got to order more, and so it worked.
For the scavenger hunt.
Specifically. It was a calculated risk that worked, but had it gone poorly, it would have been okay too. And so when we're telling people about plans that scale, the plan that scales starts with what happens if you get $0? And if you get $0 and you can still and it's not going to ruin your life and you still have potential, because even then we could have, we would have held some coins back from the scavenger hunt and tried to sell them to somebody. But that's how we approach all that stuff. And it's the same thing when hiring experts, is we approach it with, okay, let's say we spend this money and nothing happens. What does that look like? What's the end game there? Now, let's say we spend the money and things do happen. Okay, great. That could go really well. So
when you're thinking about bringing other people on to help, I think some people, on one hand, I don't know if you're familiar with control motivated people or wealth motivated people, Noam Wasserman, Founder's Dilemmas, really great book. But there's arguments that, especially creatives, especially in the creative industries like game designers, too much control over an idea and not allowing anybody else in suffocates the result of that creativity. But likewise, trusting too much might then lead you down a road that is not then very helpful. Or that doesn't work. So how do you balance that needing to make sure that you know enough about a particular area so that you can understand if an investment is actually working or not, versus allowing someone with expertise to get on with it and do what they know how to do? That's quite often a challenging thing for entrepreneurs to let go in a controlled way, if that makes sense. How do you think about that?
If you find out the answer to this, let me know. Here's what...
And maybe just appending to that, have you had any examples when it hasn't worked and you've had to, and how have you figured that out and course corrected?
So
I think for designing, I'm kind of a stickler. So we did have someone try to design the box cover at first, and I ended up not liking it. I'm that's not what I envisioned. And I didn't think I could make it either whenever I started.
But the problem there was we were letting go of something that was in our wealth dynamics that she should have been doing all along.
But I didn't think I could do it. But then I did.
Yeah.
And why didn't you think you could do it? Because you're the box is so important, so I need to let a professional do it? Or what was the thinking behind it?
I was dinking around in Photoshop, and I'm it's just not looking like how I envisioned it. I wanted it to look like a book and blah, blah, blah. And then
and the truth was, she just needed to work on it more.
Yeah.
But we interpreted that as we need to hire somebody who knows how to make game boxes.
And then it came back like every other game box, and I'm that's not what I wanted.
And I was ooh, cool! It looks like every other game box. It's exactly what we need. And Amy's no. I want it to look like a book. And I was I don't understand. Show me. And then she showed me, and I went, oh, this doesn't look like any other game box. That's what we need.
I'm I want. Yeah.
So. Okay, the way and we deal with this all the time, and the way I try to approach it is I want to make sure that I understand what is happening or why it's happening at all times. So there are no black boxes in our business. Now, I'll go back to sales again. We are doing so many sales things that never even dreamed were possible. Our plan was always that we were just going to sell on our website, because I understand how to sell on our website.
Kickstarter at first.
Barnes and Noble is going to carry our game. Books A Million is going to carry our game, and that's something I never. And
also, what is it? Longwood
Gardens, the biggest botanical garden in the United States, is carrying our game, and
As they
And
should.
so I think there's a point where some people just are like, sales guys, go, hand it off. And I'm like, whoa, okay, how does this work? Give me the 10,000 foot view. Give me the 1,000-foot view.
And they're very good at it.
And they're very good at and I do that with everything. And so we have a girl who used to work for Asmodee doing their Amazon web presence, doing our Amazon web presence. And rather than just being like, oh, that's Amazon and Hannah's doing that and I don't know what's going on, I'm like, hey, Hannah, can we jump on the phone for half an hour and just show me everything you're doing? Am I going to do it as good as she is? Nope. But I know why and how it's happening. And same thing with logistics. Tell me what's happening. Tell me why this is happening. Why are we moving the containers this way? What does all that mean? And it's a lot of learning. And I still don't think I'm an expert. But when the experts are talking to me, I understand what they're saying. And I think that's the line I draw, combined with wealth dynamics, where I know that I'm going to make the best system that I want, and no one's going to do it better. I will do that. Sales, no, not good at sales. You do sales, but I want to know, I don't want to micromanage you, but I want to know everything that's happening and why. And I want to know so it's not just like input, it's not a black box where something goes in and something comes out. Something goes into the box, but I know what's happening in the box and I know why it's coming out the way it is. And I think, and again, this is something we struggle with constantly because we're always learning new stuff. But I think that's the way to focus on it so that you know why and how things are happening the way they're happening.
Yeah, like know enough to ask good questions.
And to be able to make a call on the outside that says that that box is not working, right? Yeah. We went through this with Le Fleur. Le Fleur's campaign, all the metrics were better than Botany's. All of them. Le Fleur did less than Botany. There was one metric that did not do better, and it was our ads. And it started at the end of April. And I have a theory about, and I have no proof of this part of it, but for some reason, cost per impressions were going through the roof. Do I know how to maximize cost per impression? I do not. But do I understand what cost per impression is and that it's going through the roof?
Why it's important.
Cool. Yeah. So I know, and yeah, you got to work with whatever the reality is on cost per impressions. But if your dollar's not stretching as far, if you can't get it seen by as many people, then there are going to be other metrics that are going to suffer as a result unless you do something different. And so we found out pretty early in Le Fleur's campaign that paid advertising was a big part of Botany's campaign, because you got to make sure that people know that the game exists before they'll come and buy it. We kind of alluded to that earlier. For Le Fleur, we were having trouble making sure that people knew the game existed because we couldn't get the game in front of as many people because cost per impression through the roof. I have heard some theories, and I tend to agree with them because it's an election year, because everybody I know is suffering from cost per impressions. And what happens in an election year now? In the modern era, all the campaigns on every side on the planet start dumping millions of dollars into every market. They don't care how efficient it is. They don't care how well it's spent. They don't care about return on ad spend. All they care is that I dumped a bunch of money in here and it got seen by people. And
also some other companies are saying their ad spend is doing much better in foreign countries.
Yeah, outside the United States. Well, that's still a big part of it. And so, am I an expert there? No. But can I see the boxes not working? Yes. And that tells me I got to go find some different boxes. And that's what we did. Is you can kind of see on Le Fleur's campaign, big first day because all our metrics were going well on converting our pre-existing backers, on all our pre-campaign marketing through Launchboom. And then it kind of, what normally carries isn't picking up. And then you can see on the track, now it's going back up. Well, what the heck happened? We started coming up with alternative marketing methods where we were going out and we did, and I do not recommend anybody else do this, but we gave away a trip to Paris. That was very on brand for us. And also, that was one of the most stupidly difficult things we have done, because it turns out there's an incredible amount of regulation in the United States around giving away a trip. Incredible amount. It's basically considered gambling, right? Yeah. And so overnight we became a sweepstakes company. Well, it took 2 days, but over 2 days we became a sweepstakes. So we did that
like all day.
We started doing all these promotions about like everybody who owns a copy of Botany. And I had people emailing me like, do you need me to prove it? I'm like, you wouldn't. So everybody who owns a copy of Botany and backs Le Fleur gets our new Orchid Obsession expansion for Botany.
That we'd already been working on
for free. And people are like, do you need me to prove it? I'm like, you would not want this expansion if you didn't already own Botany. You do not need to prove it to me.
I'm sure some people might.
So I guess some people could, yeah. And people were emailing me
like salad.
They're like, what if I bought Botany right now? I'm like, here's the link, buy it. And they did. They're like,
Right.
"Wow, that's so generous." And I'm like, "Well, that's because I want people to back Le Fleur too." And so we came up with all these alternative methods to know that like other boxes. And again, am I the expert at this? Am I the expert at that? Am I expert at fulfillment? No, but I know when things aren't working, and I can make a call that box is not working. Find another box, right? And so I think that's the way to look at it. Like, and some of these boxes, like we found out very fast. We hired a sweepstakes company to help us manage all this stuff. The sweepstakes paid for itself. It doubled our social media following, which was incredible. We went from 4,000 to 10,000 followers in 2 weeks. And it's held there, so they ended up being high quality followers. Like we were like, oh, is it gonna fall off? Is it gonna change? Knowing why the box works and how, even though you couldn't, like I know why my watch works. Can I fix my watch? No, but I can tell you if the time is wrong, right? And I'll go buy a watch that does work.
In quite quick succession, you did Botany, you've launched Fleur. What's next? I know you hinted at it as like the theme that you can't get into. But are there more board games? Are there other things that you're thinking about? Like, how much of the 20 to 30 games can we try and pull out?
We
The
kind of have.
next one is the smaller box because like it's also good to diversify. We can't have like a $60
You
game.
can't sell every game a $60 game. You got to make other stuff. So we decided to make a small box version of. I hate to say it's a version of Botany. It's inspired by Botany. You'll play the themes and you'll see the themes are very similar. Totally different game. But anybody who likes Botany is going to have fun with this game, and they're going to be able to
much quicker.
They're going to be able to point to things in this game like, oh, that's Botany. That's like they can see the. But we're making a small box game for retailers that don't necessarily carry Botany size games. And so we'll see how that goes. But that's just been, even from our own perspective, I love deck builders. We want to make one. That's fun. I'm having fun doing it. It's a small, like compared to the big games we make, it's like it's almost like a joke, like how simple this process is by comparison.
Oh, I was also going to say for Le Fleur, we made a Le Petite Fleur. So that was an interesting.
Amy wanted to make kids games.
Well,
And
we have two
Nice.
small kids.
and kids games are hard to
Nice.
sell. And so
Yeah.
we had the kids help develop it. And so they're little business people now because they understand cost of goods sold. Every day they were asking how many copies we sold and what the profit margin was on it. They're trying to make a case. Ronan's our son, he's 8. He's trying to make a case for why he should be able to get this $400 Lamborghini Lego that drives itself. And I'm like, that is way too expensive. And he's like, yeah, but I made all this money on this game. And I'm like, okay, but we need to still understand the value of money, son. Just because the number's there. But so we're thinking about making more kids games. And so what we did with Le Petite Fleur, because kids games demand is so hard to gauge. They're so hard to sell. You never know if it's going to be a hit or not. Everybody looks at Monopoly Junior. Well, that's Monopoly Junior, and Monopoly Junior sells a fraction of what actual Monopoly makes. So we added it to the Kickstarter just as an add-on, and we ended up selling 1,600 copies. So now we know how many, that people want the game. So we might do some more kiddie stuff. We'll see. We got to find a clever way, like we did for Le Fleur, to like ease into it, to know what the demand is before we just, spend a bunch of money and it doesn't sell well. And then we have our next. So I think we're gonna make at least one big game a year for now. And so we're also working on that one I alluded to that's like shifting the Venn diagram is our next big project.
And that'll come out in the
and we're aiming for spring for that one. And so I think that'll be the rhythm that, in spring we do a big game and then we do small projects in between.
Spring flowers,
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Amy and Dusty, thank you so much for taking time to share your experience and geek out a little bit about Warhammer and Dominion with me today. If anybody would like to find out more about Dux Somnium, you can find them on Instagram with the handle Dux Somnium or by going to duxsomnium.com. Their most recent game, Le Fleur, that we've been chatting about, is also still accepting late pledges on Kickstarter, so make sure that you get on that as well. Amy and Dusty, thanks again for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.